There's a high chance your personal values are being compromised every day and your blind spots are derailing you. How you demonstrate genuine care towards a member of your team, how you react when you don't have the answers, your use of clean language that lifts your team up instead of loaded phrases that undermine individuals, and whether in a moment of crisis you choose to seek out facts and hard evidence instead of making emotional interpretations that are unhelpful. These behaviours are all driven by your personal values, the beliefs that guide your decisions, and your blind spots, the things that you do that you're not aware of. Hi, I'm Sehaam Cyrene, and I'm so pleased you're here for this episode of the Leaders Who Coach podcast, because this is foundational to who you are as a coach leader and how you show up. And I want you to have maximum visibility of your personal values and blind spots so you can be in control of how you are showing up. I'm going to go into all the little crevices of personal values and blind spots, including one personal value that we sometimes feel awkward about owning. What happens to us physiologically and in our brains when our values are compromised, and who exactly compromises our values? How do our blind spots derail us from living our values and building stronger relationships? And why is it critical to our success in leadership, and specifically coach leadership, that we know what they are? So many questions to answer today. I'm probably, though, going to give you more questions than answers, and you'll see what I mean as we get going. Let's get aligned on what personal values are, what blind spots are, and why they are important for coach leaders. Personal values are the principles, beliefs, and attitudes that guide our decisions, our actions, and our behaviours. We acquire them through our upbringing, our culture, and our life experiences. When your values are honoured, so someone like your boss, your peers, and your direct reports, and even your life partner recognises your contribution or understands why you did something, why it was important to you, it feels good to you, because these events fit our vision of how the world works best. You draw energy from this harmony. Equally, the opposite is true. When your values are compromised, something doesn't feel right. We feel off balance. I'm going to explore this in detail with you in a moment. Blind spots are the things we do and say that wind other people up, that we are completely, but not necessarily blissfully, unaware of. For example, talking over someone, finishing their sentences with not what they were going to say, being distracted by our phones, and not giving someone our full attention. Think of these moments as missed opportunities for connection and for observation. People do things, a body shift, a micro facial expression, for example. In the seconds we are not paying attention, and those things always tell us something valuable, if only we were fully present for them. As coach leaders, you may recall in my first episode the definition of leaders who coach. Here's a quick recap. At Coach Lead, we define coach leadership as this: leaders who coach use coaching skills to amplify their effectiveness in leading and their impact on the business. As well as guiding and directing people, leaders who coach are committed to working in partnership with you, their direct report, to support and inspire you to grow and achieve your fullest potential. Knowing your personal values and your blind spots helps you make intentional choices and decisions that honour what you stand for, keeping you, as we coaches like to say, in integrity. The more we practice making choices and decisions by honouring our personal values and sidestepping our blind spots, the greater the congruency, alignment we maintain within ourselves. We start to feel more in balance more often. And that's where the feel-good hormones like to show up. What this also starts to yield is consistency in our behaviour, how we show up as leaders and people managers for ourselves and for our people. Your people thrive in an environment of safety, predictability, and not boring predictability, just predictability about you and your responses to situations. They can anticipate how you are going to be for them, and that creates the right conditions for opening up, generosity and thinking, space for creative problem solving, building trust, and so on. Let's dive into personal values. I've decided the best way for us to do that is for me to share what leaders who have done the personal values exercise in my Leaders Who Coach course have chosen and how they elaborated on their values. Because this way I can explain the nuances, show you how the same values mean slightly different things to different people. And I also want to clear away for you the values that we might feel awkward about, because I don't want you to feel awkward about them. I want you to properly embrace them, because that will be your truth. There's nothing to be gained from holding a value that you think you should have, that you think others think you should have, that you think culturally you should have. That's a waste of your time. You can't live somebody else's values, because you'll always be out of balance with yourself. You'll always feel conflicted and have an internal, frustrated dialogue with yourself, and possibly worse, judge yourself harshly for not honouring that value sufficiently when it really wasn't one of your truths to begin with. For context, the personal values exercise is a very simple one. One side of A4 with 245, yes, exactly 245 value words that leaders scan and select their values from without overthinking it, for the self-censoring reasons I've just mentioned. You'll find a link to the list of values in the description, along with an instruction video, so you can do this exercise yourself. So simple, so revealing. Okay, so picking out some examples was a tough challenge for me, because over the multiple cohorts of Leaders Who Coach, I've heard leaders share hundreds of beautiful values. I've limited myself to 8 that many of you will relate to, including one awkward one that we have a complicated relationship with. Here goes. Achievement. This particular leader said, "I have to achieve because failure is a dreadful thing." Isn't that interesting? Achievement is great. We can feel accomplished, capable, more confident, and we like those feelings, so we drive hard for them. Maybe we're also a little competitive, but we can't assume that, because for some people, achievement is an internal personal goal, and any sign of competition turns us off, has us lose interest. But then we have failure is a dreadful thing. Could that mean painful, shameful? Where did we learn that? As a leader, does that mean when one of your direct reports fails, you express frustration at them? What is your attitude to people making mistakes? Are you tolerant, accepting, or does it trigger something deep inside of you? And what then does your team experience about you when something goes wrong? Is this a blind spot as well as a value? You could be so driven to achieve that you might get irritated quickly with people who process things at a different, slower pace, because they are honouring one of their values, which might be accuracy or quality. Your blind spot could mean that you miss this cue completely. All right, the next one, ambition. The leader says, "I believe in achieving great things." Notice how this leader used the word achieving but didn't choose achievement. We use words differently, which is why, as a coach leader, you always want to invite someone to elaborate on what they mean when they say achievement. What we anticipate they will say can often not be what they actually express. As a coach leader, you learn not to make assumptions. Could ambition create a blind spot for us? Perhaps. It might make us eager, tenacious, focused, always saying yes. Where am I going with this? Because all of these things are great until they impact how we show up for other people, especially as coach leaders. Could this be when we become so single-minded to the detriment of our own team members being able to have a voice, make a contribution, get a slice of the action? In our minds, do we invite collaboration or do we insist that something is done our way because that delivers the best experience, as you define a good experience? Here's another leader who also chose ambition. They said, I want to change the world, but am I pushing too hard? Are they aware of this potential blind spot? They want to change the world, similar to our leader who said, I believe in achieving great things, but not quite. It's bigger. How? What do they want to change? What is not how they envision it? But there's also some self-doubt here, some conflict internally. But am I pushing too hard? What does that mean, pushing too hard? As a coach leader, you learn to develop that curiosity and ask more questions. We could just leave it at that, but a little invitation will for sure give you a richer conversation. For example, you could invite with, say more about that, or as a question, say more about that, or you could simply repeat their words, pushing too hard, and then fall silent. Hold the space for them to elaborate. They usually do. The invitation from you expresses to them that what they have to say matters, and that in itself validates them and builds trust with you. I encourage all my leaders to do this exercise with their teams because they discover so many new things about their people that they never really understood before. Even colleagues they've worked with for 5 or 10 years. They never shared what was important to them. Isn't that a waste? We work shoulder to shoulder, but sometimes never really know the person we're collaborating with. How about challenge? One leader said, I'm better when I'm challenged, I'm more effective. And another said, I like to thrive. Both are pressure conditions for creativity, problem solving, and performance. But we want to ask, what does being more effective look like so we understand better? Could it be that they're more collaborative or more independent when they're challenged? And thrive. What does that look like for this leader? Does that make them more energized, sociable? Thrive to me echoes energy, feeling alive. But what does it mean for them? Do they do better under pressure? Some of us procrastinate until close to the deadline. Some of us need deadlines for the creative juices to flow. Some of us like to work at a steady pace because we like to have some banter with our team and friends. That reflects one of our values. In a team dynamic or family situation even, can thriving under a challenge make us behave in ways we cannot appreciate and that are unhelpful to those around us? Coming up next, I've got family, humour, teamwork, and one final value that some of us have an uncomfortable relationship with. But tell me, what's coming up for you listening to this? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this in the comments. What is your experience of understanding your own personal values? And when do they tip into becoming blind spots for you? Okay, here it is. Family, another big motivator for many of us. Here are 3 different expressions. I have responsibilities, my partner and young son. I'm the breadwinner. Being able to deliver on these responsibilities is bottom lined by I'm the breadwinner. This sounds like a financial motivator, and there's seriousness or weightiness to this statement, isn't there? The next expression, I come from a big family. We're very inclusive. It's about trust, being social, caring, and compassionate. Same value choice, family, but a very different expression of what it means to each leader. For this leader, what plays out in their family life may be how they show up at work, an energy or dynamic that they are drawn to. Perhaps being in large groups is their happy space. For some of us, large groups can be uncomfortable, too stimulating. In a team, how do you suppose this plays out when you have two people both valuing family but having very different experiences and definitions for them? Fascinating, hey? And how about this expression of family? All of this doesn't matter if my family isn't happy. If life at home isn't good, sometimes we withdraw from work, become quieter, less collaborative. Our creativity is stifled. If that piece, family, isn't doing great, this leader may easily check out. Or maybe they can't provide for their family, holidays, adventures, quality of life, or time at home regularly. That is, not working late. This might push them to seek a role somewhere else if the work conditions don't fundamentally support their expectations for their family. As coach leaders, it's critical that we understand our team members' personal values because these are their motivators. And if there is some way that we can support them in honouring their values, we build trust and loyalty as well as improve the well-being for our team member. In terms of a blind spot here, it may be that when we organise gatherings, we may tend to organise large gatherings in noisy or big spaces where some team members or family members might prefer smaller, more intimate setups. Some of us become quieter in larger groups, we're more introverted, and that can frustrate those of us who are more vocal, and some of us become louder and dominate conversations, which, can get a little bit too much. On a side note, closely related to family is the value love, and this can extend to colleagues and friends too. It's a beautiful one that I'm always heartened, excuse the pun, to hear because it is completely who they are. They love connections with people and show up in every interaction they have. In a world where we censor our emotions, I'm always inspired by people who can so easily express warmth to others. Okay, how about humour and laughter? Similar values, but let's look at how leaders express them. All right, I'm cheating here, but you're getting 2 for 1. For humour, we have this. I have a wry sense of humour and people mistake it for being bitchy. But actually, I'm very concerned about people's feelings. This makes me smile because how often have we taken someone's wry sense of humour as being thick-skinned or tough? But actually, this leader has an awareness that sometimes their sense of humour can be abrasive and hurt others. I'm sure you've seen this play out in your teams many times. Have you been offended by such a person? Could it be this leader's blind spot? How do they know if or when people feel offended? Could knowing this about your team member change the dynamic between you a full 180 degrees? For laughter, one leader says, I have good relationships. We laugh throughout the day. And another leader says, it underpins everything. It's a sign that people are enjoying themselves. Laughter for both of them might be their tonic, how they draw their energy, how they feel valued if they're causing the laughter. Sometimes it's even how they deflect criticism, how they dodge difficult realities. And they may respond to a serious issue with humour, sometimes dark humour. Easy to misread someone making a joke about something serious as being callous, uncaring, or insensitive. And I have seen the odd person use it to sabotage conversations too, to take away attention from somebody else. But generally speaking, maybe it's how some of us navigate the world more easily. And of course, with humour and laughter, there's a cultural element that can add complexity to a situation within a diverse team across gender, ethnicity, and so on. That means some people feel at ease with humour and laughter, and some of us may not. Humour and laughter is a tricky one because it might positively or negatively impact your team culture. As a coach leader, part of your responsibility is protecting your team culture. So where do you sit with that? How do your own personal values determine your response in these situations? And how about teamwork? One leader says it's the liaison between us and all the other teams that helps us have a good customer focus, which speaks to collaboration, relationships, connection, quality, gratitude, and service as potential related values that they could have chosen. But which one of those is it really about? And what about working with people who like to work solo in solitude or need to do some solo work first before they feel they can contribute to the team? Another leader says, I want the respect of my team. What their people think of them matters a great deal to them. They wouldn't want to let them down. But what constitutes teamwork for them? And what actions or behaviours earn that respect? What do they in turn feel they gain when they have their team's respect? How does that affect them? I did warn you about all the questions, right? There are so many others that I could share with you, like common sense, efficiency, growth, and truth. Perhaps another time. Stay right there. Don't go anywhere. The last personal value I want to share with you is the one we can feel a little awkward about. That's right after this. Leaders Who Coach is my CPD certified 5-star rated course where I teach leaders and people managers how to use coaching skills. Available as a self-paced course or as a 12-week enrichment cohort with your peer leaders. You get to learn the 12 skills of Leaders Who Coach through 100 micro video lectures, role-related assignments, and live coaching practice and supervision with me, Sehaam Cyrene. The 12 skills come under 4 super important competencies: grounded leadership, emotional connections, conversation skills, and the capability and capacity of teams. Mastering these gives coach leaders confidence to show up and add value in pretty much any situation. Why? Because when coach leaders practice coach leadership, they build and protect a culture that is supportive, collaborative, and unlocks the individual's own desire to grow, excel, and contribute in ways that are beneficial to their team, organisation, and customers. Where conventional leadership approaches emphasise directive and control-based methods, coach leadership is all about empowering your team members, so direct reports, peers, customers, and even your boss, empowering them to design their own approaches as appropriate to the situation. Check out more details in the Coach Leadership FAQ, course details and testimonials from graduate leaders at Accenture, Buffer, Cancer Research UK, Clarinet, JP Morgan Chase Moo, Publicis Sapient, Sainsbury's and others at coachlead.co/leaders-who-coach. Are you enjoying this as much as I am? I'd love to know in the comments. And if you are, why not share this episode with a person or team you care about? Anyone you think needs to hear or would enjoy this exploration right now. And I promised you one awkward value that we seem to have a complicated relationship with: prosperity. Similar values might be wealth or success. For prosperity, the leader shared, I want to be rich enough to not work and be with family. To see them happy makes me happy. It's about freedom. Fantastic. And yet some of us feel shame in declaring we want to be wealthy and have financial independence. Don't. Because I can tell you that when I've dug deeper and asked questions, the wealth is normally about being able to take care of our loved ones. Family. Again, interesting. Some of us choose family as our value and some of us choose prosperity or wealth, where our definitions are almost exactly the same. If we've come from less privileged backgrounds and experienced poverty as children, we're very likely to be motivated financially because Some time long ago, we promised ourselves that we'd never be poor again, and that our children and family should never experience the shame or embarrassment that we felt as kids by not being able to buy nice things, live in a nice house, or go on school trips. Why would we judge someone for holding this value? Now, remember at the very beginning, I talked about how when our values are compromised, we can feel out of balance. Well, it's important to call out the two groups of people who compromise our values. The first one is, well, obviously, other people when they say or do things that may be offensive to us. For example, not being respectful or professional, especially if that's one of our values, right? Or when we feel undermined because we experience a loss of responsibility in a task, someone, our boss, takes something away from us, or our thinking and ideas are ridiculed. And the second group of people to compromise our values is us. We too can compromise our own values when we're not certain of our own leadership style, when we're working in an environment that culturally feels out of sync with our own values, or when we're feeling stressed and under pressure because of workloads, deadlines, and even things like having to deliver a presentation or speak at an event. In both cases, we can feel anxiety. And here's the science, simplified for my benefit mostly. If you've heard of the fight, flight, or tend and befriend responses, it's this bean-sized part of the brain called the amygdala that is detecting the danger and that sets off a chain reaction or wakes up our stress response hormone, which ultimately tells our adrenal glands that sit on top of our kidneys to release cortisol into our bloodstream. That's all great when you need to think fast and react to danger or an emergency. We breathe faster to take in more oxygen. Our heart beats faster to get that oxygen to our muscles so we can run or escape if we need to. Adrenaline is another stress hormone also released by our adrenal glands. This combination for prolonged periods of time is not a good thing. As well as causing longer term damage to our bodies, it leads us to overreact to situations, have irrational or illogical thoughts, or how we analyze a situation might be skewed, or we poorly interpret events or other people's intentions. It could be as simple as someone asking us a clarifying question, but to us, we read it as a personal attack, especially if it happens in public, like a team meeting or during a presentation. And let's say that person is disagreeing with us. We're too much on the defensive that listening to their point of view feels too difficult or too risky. But put us in a calm state and we'll do a much better job at listening, being open, collaborative, or even promoting somebody else's idea above our own. This overreaction is referred to as an amygdala hijack. Basically, our rational brain doesn't get a proper chance to rationally evaluate a threat or situation, and our overreaction causes us to show up inconsistently. When we show up inconsistently, people don't know where they stand with us from one situation to the next. It breaks trust and affects our reputation, how competent we come across to others. So, back to our personal values and blind spots. Knowing them is very grounding because we can do a really simple technique for catching ourselves before we respond, especially under pressure when we're more prone to amygdala hijacking. We can use our awareness about both our personal values and blind spots to self-check when we find ourselves in a tricky situation. For example, does what I'm about to do or say honor my values, or am I about to undermine myself by responding in ways that actually compromise what I stand for and are opposite of who I am when I'm in a calm state of mind? Self-awareness, knowing ourselves better, helps us avoid wrestling with an upsetting situation for days, helps us avoid losing sleep about why something feels wrong. We would do well to have our personal values close to hand, in easy view somewhere, and have a private chat with ourselves. Which of my values are being compromised? How am I compromising them? Who else or what else is compromising them? Get to articulating exactly how you feel and what is happening in minutes, not days or nights. Knowing our personal values is like having a quick shorthand to check our thinking and course correct our choices and actions. The other brilliant thing about discovering your own personal values and learning to reference them more easily is that you start to notice the values of others through the conversations you have with them and observing their behaviours. You learn to speak their language, literally and figuratively, and that insight makes building a relationship with others much easier. But as far as your blind spots go, we all have them. Trust me, I have mine. My adult kids are very quick to tell me so. What's beautiful about knowing your blind spots is that you can do something about it. You can slow down. You can put your phone away at dinner. You can ask how others would like to plan things. You can recognize when some people have receded into the background and find a way to invite them back in. Or you can ask a question instead of giving unsolicited advice. And your people at work and at home will appreciate it a lot. And that might earn their trust as they feel more connected to you. They might share more with you next time. And they might just call you on your blind spots too, hopefully with a sense of humour that you can both laugh at. Oh, we need more levity in life. So check out the links in the description to my 2 free instruction videos for discovering your personal values and uncovering your blind spots. This relationship between our personal values and how we show up is really important to understand as a coach leader because it determines the quality of all our relationships. Consistency in leadership is closely bound with trust and competence. The more consistently you show up, the more people trust you and perceive you to be competent. Being more consistent in how you show up will certainly improve your reputation. Check out my short video on how leading with integrity affects our reputation for more on that. And by the way, knowing our own personal values helps us to self-advocate quicker in the moment or soon after an incident. We can go to someone and express, hey, I found that line of questioning in front of the team really hard because I value being professional and I wasn't prepared for your questions, so I felt very unprofessional. Do you think next time you and I could meet before the team review? I'd value your perspective on what I might be missing in the presentation so I can prepare better. Before I share what's next on the Leaders Who Coach podcast and ask from me to you, if you enjoyed this episode, let me know with a thumbs up, a heart, a star. I'm not picky. Honestly, your review helps me reach more leaders like you, so I'm very appreciative of your time to do that. Do subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already, and you'll find links to where else to find me in the description below. So, how do you go about explaining your coach leadership style to your team, peers, and boss? Why would you do that? What's the upside? That's what you and I are exploring together next. We're on a roll. Join me here on the Leaders Who Coach podcast.